Yeah, just to introduce myself. So I spent about 15 years in FMCG. The first 10 years of that I was at Waitrose, and for a large chunk of that I was a buyer at Waitrose. These are some of the categories I bought. I won't read them out because you can read. I left Waitrose about 5 years ago and worked as a senior NAM at L'Oreal. I've worked at Boll, which is a plant-based ready meals company. I now work at PZ Cussons Beauty, running all of their bricks and mortar accounts. So I've both been on the buying side and the selling side for pretty much my entire career. And then I also have my, I'm very millennial, my bit on the side, have my consultancy where I help start up food and drinks brands, prep their pitches, and run the commercial side of their business. So that's what I do. The reason I'm interesting to you guys in particular, I'm sure, is because I used to be a Waitrose buyer. So I can give you that little peek behind the curtain of how a buyer actually thinks and what it is they value when brands come and talk to me. So Chris and Alex have just asked me if I can bring a bit of a story, some do's, some don'ts, some examples from my buying time of brands doing this really well, of selling your commercial proposition to me. So without any further ado, I'm going to take you through a tale of two juices. So this was back in about 2015, and I had two big brands. Well, actually at the time, one medium brand and one huge brand of not from concentrate juices on my fixture. So Innocent were only just coming out of being a smoothies only business. They had sort of started to build themselves into a bottled juice company as well, but weren't of any kind of size. Whereas the absolute giants of PepsiCo, Tropicana, and Capella pretty much owned everybody's category. But back in 2015, I had a problem, and it was a major problem. So if you just go to the next slide, you may, of course, remember some of these headlines. My problem wasn't Nigel Farage. He's become my problem since that, of course, as with many of the rest of us. But no, the problem was all of a sudden the Daily Mail and much of the other press decided that they were going to splash all over the front pages. Juice kills your kids. Juice will make your teeth fall out. And whilst there are some elements of truth in that, there was also a heck of a lot of scaremongering. It doesn't kill your kids, in case anyone's wondering. But as a result of these headlines, we were in overnight double-digit decline. It literally just happened like that. I have the date written down somewhere, the Daily Mail's first headline, and from the next week, I was -10. And that wasn't just my category, that was the entire industry's juice category. Everybody stopped buying juice pretty much that day. Of course, my profitability fell off a cliff, and the worst thing was there was no solution in sight. So I was getting a lot of pressure from my bosses, fix it, fix it, fix it, because there's a lot of profit that we're now missing. And so amongst other things, I went to my two brands and I said, help, what can I do? Help me out. I need a strategy to fix this. So first of all, Tropicana and Capella, or PepsiCo, the company that represent them, I said, what should I do? And they came back with the deeply unhelpful suggestions. List more of our MPD, give us more gondola ends, and stick with our promo strategy that we've been running all of this time. As you can see from those responses, it was all about them. It was all about just getting what they wanted. It wasn't providing a solution. People weren't buying juice, not because there wasn't enough MPD on fixture, not because there weren't enough gondola ends. There was a juice gondola end every single period, and the promo strategy wasn't working because we were in -10% at best in any given week. But that was all they wanted to talk to me about, what their brand plans were. Whereas I went to Innocent, I said, I've got a problem, and Innocent just said, how can we help? How can we help? And that is a sentence I really want you to remember. I've written down what I then said to Innocent, so excuse me as I read this off because there's a lot of it. Innocent, I need to stop hemorrhaging sales. I need to convince customers that a glass of orange juice won't rot their teeth and kill their kids. I need to make juice fun again. I need positive PR. I need an entirely new promotional strategy to entice people back to the category. I need an MPD pipeline that brings both low sugar options for some customers and twists on traditional juice from other customers. I need to improve overall sustainability of packaging across the category. I need a big brand to partner with me on all of this because I can't do it alone. And I need to do all of those things whilst improving my profitability, please. Innocent, my national account manager, looked me in the eye and said, okay, we'll go and work on it. We'll get to work. You know, that was a big, and I genuinely did. I just ranted at them for a little while on all the things I desperately needed help with, because I was in serious trouble with my category, and they just said, all right, leave it with us. So within 12 months then, and there's obviously regular communication coming both from the NAM and from the marketing team and various others, Innocent had come back to me, and this is what we had implemented within 12 months. They had given me an exclusive marketing and PR campaign that ran only through Waitrose. It later became wider, so you might have seen it, the Eat a Rainbow campaign, encouraging people to not only eat your greens, but eat your purples, eat your yellows, and eat your reds as well. That started as a Waitrose exclusive campaign. They gave us first to market on their coconut water, which a lot of people were moving into at the time. They also gave us exclusive product launches. You got their apple and elderflower. Waitrose, funnily enough, because of the demographic, has an enormous overtrade in elderflower flavors. So they bought us an exclusive elderflower variant, which I believe is still exclusive now. They gave us this wasn't next up there. This obviously wasn't exclusive to us, but they brought out their whole new Taste Good, Does Good TVC. This was switching juice around so that juice had good news stories. It wasn't just about the flavor and about enjoying it with breakfast. You probably remember Tropicana's ubiquitous New York breakfast campaign. If you don't, Google it and it'll bring back memories of the early noughties. But it wasn't about that anymore. It was about juice doing something good. And this is the Bad Rule commercial, which is the name of the mango turner, where they grow their mangoes. But they were all about talking about juice doing good for the world, doing good for communities, as well as good for you. They then bought a new promotional strategy, which for the sake of time I won't go into, but they changed their internal promo rules of what they were allowed to do in terms of promotion to support us and bring new customers back, or repeat customers back into the category through enticing promos. And then finally, I'm just going to move my little picture of pictures of everyone. Yeah, improved packaging sustainability. So during the course of that year, they came to me and said, all right, well, we can't come out of plastic because that's not going to be possible from our side. And actually plastic's better than Tetra in terms of recyclability at the time, because it's curbside recyclable. But what we can do is we can introduce bottles that are 50% PCR, that's recycled plastic, 15% plant material, and then, well, as you can see from the graphic, they were working on the rest, and I believe they've improved it more since that. They bought me all of these things, and it didn't fix my category decline in isolation, but it pulled me back into single-digit decline. It definitely drove my profitability, and it meant that no longer was Waitrose declining faster than the rest of the industry. We're actually declining slower than the rest of the industry. Now, I want you just to take, sorry, just jump back one sec. Thank you. I want you just to take 1 minute and have a look at these 5 items. Now, these were all presented as solutions to me, for solutions to my problem. And it made me feel very, very listened to, very helped, very supported. How many of these do you think were created because I asked them to create the solution? Now, I don't know for sure, but I would put my mortgage on the fact that the answer is 0. These were all plans that Innocent had already been working on. These were all things that Innocent were doing because they knew what the category needed. But their attitude and their approach was, we are going to listen to our buyer. We are going to empathize with our buyer. And then we are going to take all of the things that we plan to do already. We might need to change them ever so slightly. We might need to give a bit more exclusivity here than we would ideally like to do. But we are going to bring them to this buyer and present them as our solution to his problem. So they got away everything they wanted to do just because of how they listened and then presented it to me. So then what did they gain out of it, as well as getting all of these things away within Waitrose? They became my partner brand in the category. We gave them an inordinate amount of space, which, you know, to be blunt, they gained from Tropicana and Capella. They got a 4 times increase in secondary space, so they went from 5 gondola ends a year to 20. Full range in full distribution, that was a game changer for them. That allowed them to break out from being a Me Too juice brand to being a major player, which they still are across the industry now. We were the first retailer that really demonstrated to consumers that they could be as big as Tropicana and Capella. And then finally, and most importantly, they got a 350% sales uplift that year. So all of these are things that you can take to your business and say, now, I'm giving you a probably the best possible example that I ever experienced. But actually, my point is hopefully very clear. If you come to your buyer, listen to them, show empathy and bring them solutions rather than just tell them what you plan to do, it is worth it. You will make money from that. So finally, I just wanted to end with some top tips. Hopefully you've already worked out what my top tips are going to be, because I've already said them 3 or 4 times. So first of all, listen. Your stance needs to be listening. Now that doesn't just apply to your NAM, but your NAM, your national account manager or your sales manager or whoever's going and having the meetings, they need to get in the practice of trying to write down verbatim notes from what the buyer's said. Now, obviously, it's not going to be a particularly productive meeting if they're literally sat there scribbling. So try and get them to try and memorize exactly what the buyer said and how it said it, and get them to practice listening and active listening in the meetings with buyers. Now, you guys are all marketing managers or heads of marketing. Your job is to listen too. I've been a NAM for over 5 years, and very frequently I come back to my business. I relay everything my buyers said, and I don't feel like that's been listened to by me. And my marketing manager might still say, okay, but here's our brand plan. No. Listen to what the buyer has said. Then, secondly, solve the buyer's problems. So present your brand plan as a solution to their problems. Now, the buyer's not always going to have as massive a problem as I had on Juice, but they're always going to have problems. And if not problems, they're always going to have gaps that can be filled with opportunities. So that could be considered a problem, but come with solutions rather than plans. And the buyer will be so much more receptive because they are so busy. If you are their solution expert, then they're going to pick up the phone to you anytime they need anything done. And that means you get more of your plans locked away. And then finally, be the brand that can. So my answer to everything as a national account manager that my buyer asked me to do is yes, if. So if my buyer comes and says, we need you to bring us 10 items of MPD, and I know there's only 5 in the pipeline, my answer is still yes. It's yes if, and obviously the if will be very much dependent, but basically if you can make it worth our while, if you can put enough investment behind it, if you can put enough space behind it, if you can drive us hard enough to deliver X, Y, and Z, then we can provide you with that. Because as I'm sure you guys know, where there's a will, there's a way, and certainly where there's a large amount of cash, there's a way. So if you should always be the positive brand, the brand that can help the buyer, national account managers, and then by extension, you guys, because you are the brand strategists, your objective should always be to say yes to the buyer. The only exception being if they ask you for more margin, but that's allowed and that's expected that you say that you're going to say no to that. But you guys should also, I really encourage you to practice the yes if stance when a NAM comes and relays to you what the buyer has said, what the buyer has asked for when it comes to brand issues or anything that comes within your domain. So that's my story. That's what I have to share with you in terms of advice. I'll hand back over to you guys, Chris and Alex.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. There were some absolute gems in there. But I think my favorite is bring solutions, not plans, because as a brand manager, you're so into it's all about your brand plan, all about getting the plan ready, all about getting the plan executed, and you think everyone loves your plan as much as you do, but you know, the bring solutions and not plans, I think is brilliant.
Particularly when, if you're not selling your product direct, or if most of your product is being sold through a retailer, unless you're doing what that retailer is looking for, nothing happens. And you've got all this amazing product, all these amazing ideas that no one will ever see. So you got to have some tram lines, you know, some lines you won't cross. And maybe there are other brands in the category that can go there instead of you. You need to know what those are, but mostly, yes, if. Yeah. Negotiate.
Yeah. Okay, right. So it's an opportunity now for you guys to ask Chris anything you like, essentially. So if I can ask you to either sort of put your hands up or use the use one of the reactions on the Zoom panel for who's got some questions, then we'll open the floor to Chris. So who would like to? Kat.
I just wanted to ask, where you obviously were working with Innocent, did you have any Did other brands have any issue with the fact that you were promoting another brand more than, you know, Capella?
Did other brands have a problem with it?
Yeah, did you have any feedback where people were saying that this is a problem because they were no longer getting the share of shelf, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Capella had a big problem with it. I've got to be careful because obviously, even though it was 5-6 years ago, I don't want to sort of betray any commercially confidential info. But the long and the short of it is, I was in the process of I suppose tendering out my brand partner position. So historically, it had been Tropicana and Capella through PepsiCo because they were the only brand big enough to do anything. And part of the dialogue going on when I was looking for somebody to help me with all of these issues is also who is going to be my leader with promotions, with space, with MPD priority, all of that kind of thing. And so, as well as the dialogue about who can help me going on, it was also about who is going to be the best commercial option. But in this particular scenario, whoever was going to fix my problem the most was automatically the best commercial option. Yeah, the day after the decision was made, because we actually locked down the brand partnership with a 2-year contract, the day after the brand position was made and we began to implement the changes, because as I said, Innocent gained a lot of space and that meant that Tropicana and Capella lost a lot. Yeah, the PepsiCo UK MD was in my MD's office yelling at him, how dare you do this to us? But I and actually my predecessor had spent 7 or 8 months worth of negotiating and offering Tropicana and Capella the opportunity to come and be that brand helpful, and they had just not listened. It had all been about them. They had probably thought we were bluffing to a degree. They're never really going to back Innocent that much. Innocent are this, like, you know, young Turks, never really going to come and challenge us. And they were wrong. They thought they were calling our bluff, but we weren't bluffing. So we gave Innocent everything that we thought Innocent deserved, and it was pretty much at Tropicana and Capella's expense. Their sales plummeted in an already plummeting market, and yeah, they were furious. I had next to no relationship with them for 2 years, but I didn't need it because I had Innocent. That's
also really good learning. You know, it's to remember that you are not the only brand in the category. And so if you fall out with a retailer, that might not hurt them as much as it hurts you, but it might hurt them. So it's understanding the nature of the relationship. And I would always err on the side of a positive relationship, and one where you're being as helpful as you possibly can, because it will pay benefit at some point in the future, always.
Yeah. Right. Any other questions?
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
You must have sat in numerous brand presentations.
1 or 2, yeah.
I imagine over your time at Waitrose and beyond. And I wondered, like, what is there one time or one specific kind of presentation that really stands out? What did that brand do to really get your attention? Because I guess, you know, we're all probably sitting here thinking, how can we get their attention? How can we stand out?
Yeah. So there's 2 sides to getting attention. So actually getting my attention before the meeting is really, really important, because I'm going to be endeared to you. I'm going to be more likely to give you the meeting in the first place. A really good example I have of that was Vita Coco. So again, when I was Juice Buyer and it was sort of the coconut water boom, it was middle of summer, absolute heat wave. It was just horribly hot. Waitrose head office doesn't have very good air conditioning, and we were just sat in the office just melting. Hottest day of the year, nobody wanted to be in the office. And at about 2 p.m, a Vita Coco intern turned up with a crate full of ice cold Vita singles, beautifully presented in wood straw and all that kind of thing, turned up at the post room and said, please can this go directly to Chris Whittaker's desk? All of a sudden I was the most popular person in the office, funnily enough. Everyone was crowding around me just trying to get a free cold drink. And then I just took a pause moment 5 minutes after that and looked around, and the entire Waitrose buying floor was drinking and enjoying ice cold Vita Cocos. And that's marketing that you couldn't possibly pay for if you tried to, you know, because you've got some very influential people in the industry in that room loving your product. So that got my attention more than any other. Now, what did that cost them? Next to nothing. You know, the cost of a couple of cases of product and somebody having a good idea on the right day and timing it right. So in terms of getting attention, how can you stand out and surprise and delight your buyer? in the presentation itself, I think the thing I've got to be really key on is brevity. So I sat in the last half hour or so of the training, and Chris and Alex were really clear on the value of storytelling, and I really agree with that. But like, be ruthless with that edit button. It's so tempting, either as a brand owner or a brand manager, or sometimes even a salesperson, to tell the whole brand story, and it gets very boring, because as a buyer I would hear 10 brand stories a day, and I could usually predict what was coming next. So actually get it really short. What's your point of difference, and how can absolutely bring all the things that you guys are experts at, you know, romance me a little bit, bring some buzzwords, get me excited about your product and that kind of thing, but keep it short, keep it snappy. Anything else I want to throw on top of that? I suppose catching my attention is just about, it's the creativity, just trying to think of a way that does it different to every other presentation you will have sat in many presentations yourself, and you know that they'll all be very similar to each other. So just how can you be a bit memorable in a sea of sameness?
Yeah. Do you want to mention the Plenish story?
Yes.
Telling Alex and Ice, this is a good one.
Yeah, very similar to Chris's shoe story, actually. So Plenish, who you probably know as a nut milk brand now, were originally a smoothie and single serve juice brand of very premium, sort of £8 to £10 per 250 ml, and they wanted me to take them as their first supermarket listing. We had got quite a long way through the dialogue, but I just kept on having this blocker that they were so expensive for a supermarket customer, and so we had a lot of back and forth dialogue, and they were very nearly over the line with my listing, but just not quite there. I just needed a little bit more convincing, and as well as sending me data to support, which was the most important thing, the buyer also sent me a full-size circus hula hoop in their brand colors, with some beautiful sort of silver trim decoration on it, with a note attached to it saying, Chris, you know, it's been delighted to get to know you and work with you. Just to let you know, any more hoops that you want us to jump through, we'll be right there. And again, you know, memorable, fun. Do be careful with that stuff. I think for the sake of time, I won't give some of the negative examples, but I've had some of those that have not been received well. But so do be careful, and just put yourself in the buyer's shoes on what it might like to receive one of those. But yeah, if you can be memorable and stand out and do something fun and exciting, it will really help. Surprise and delight. You know, buyers are humans. Buyers spend a lot of time in boring meetings. But actually most of them are really passionate foodies, because that's why they would do that job in the first place. But if you're a passionate foodie and 99% of your week is sat in a spreadsheet, then actually you want to be reminded of why you love this job. So actually a little bit of surprise and delight is going to go a long way.
Thank you.
Who else has got a question? Probably got time for one more, maybe two.
I guess I had a question about how, you know, you were kind of talking about Innocent becoming that brand partner, and when they were kind of more so like the challenger brand. So I think we've sort of finding ourselves, I'm from Pip and Nut, by the way, the nut butter brand, in a slightly in between place where we kind of were that really small challenger brand. And now we kind of still are, but there's Manny Life and a few other kind of smaller ones coming in. So it's like, how do we retain that kind of position as the kind of cool young challenger brand? Because yeah, we definitely don't have the budgets of Whole Earth still, but just managing that, particularly actually with Waitrose, has always been a bit of a sticking point for us. So
yeah, no, for a brand in your position, you're transitioning from being SME to being big supplier, and actually Pip and Nut is such a famous brand now that even though to you guys you don't feel big, you know, I've been to your offices, I've met Pippa a couple of times, you don't feel big, you still feel like that SME, but actually as far as a buyer is concerned, the amount you're turning over compared with other brands, you're one of the big boys now. So actually, I know, right? It won't feel like it to you, but that's how the market thinks about you now, because actually you guys are responsible for redefining a category. And yeah, you got all these young Turks snapping at your heels now. But you redefine that category, and so the buyer will think of you exactly as I was thinking of Innocent at the time. So you did such a good job of redefining what was a very, very boring and stale category a number of years ago. You now need to think about, how do we take it to the next level? You may not have the same money as Whole Earth, but how can we act like we did? You know, Innocent at the time, okay, it's not the perfect example because they did have a bit of money, because it was just following the first Coke major investment before Coke became the major owner. So they did have money, but actually all of that activity that they did paid for itself in the sales that they made from us following up. So if you can bring your brand plans, if you can practice that sort of yes if relationship, that solution relationship, that how can we be bigger, you know, and I would suggest that the angle to play with you guys is that there's a colossal amount of category headroom to play with. Whilst peanut butter's grown massively, it can still grow a lot more. You're plus 22% as a category, peanut butters this year, because I've just been working on this this year because of lockdown. How are you going to keep those lockdown breakfasters in peanut butter after they can all go back to Pret again in 6 months' time? So you need to be going to your retailers and bringing these plans. Now, these plans can sound great and exciting and grandiose, even if they're still relatively cheap. And you can present to the buyers the art of the possible. It might not be something you've necessarily got budget for yet, because the art of the possible is also, but in exchange for it, we need this extra distribution, these extra listing, these extra gondola ends, and then you can accrue the money to do the activity that you promised in advance. It's very chicken and egg, but that is how you present yourself as somebody who's ready to transition up into be one of the big boys.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Amazing, Chris, thank you very much indeed.